Ossetia and Abkhazia in an attempt to get a military response from the Russians that Dick Cheney, it's now been declassified, wanted to lead to nuclear war. I mean, these are people that live in the underground bunkers. You know, Cheney spent half his time in Site R. And now we know why. He had Navy SEALs preparing an attack on U.S. ships to start a war with Iran, which all of the experts who've looked at it agree could easily lead to World War III. Now, Kurt Nimmo has an article up on Infowars.com, Unthinkable. New movie promotes torture and nuclear false flag terrorism. And I want to play the audio of this now. Later when we're live at prisonplanet.tv, I'm going to play the video, but it's in an article up on Infowars.com. And this is the behavior placement, guaranteed paid for by the government. It's now admitted in even the Wall Street Journal. They call it behavior placement. I call it propaganda placement or brainwashing placement. This is to create fear and to create the perception, because the average American is in a lackadaisical, mesmerized dream state where TV and movies and video games, all of it just runs together, and they just halfway pay attention to the news, halfway pay attention to the newspaper, and they just hear Al-Qaeda's got nukes, they're going to attack us, they're working with Iran, we've got to have a global system to stop this, we've got to have checkpoints, we've got to have mobile naked body scanners, we've got to interrogate our neighbors, we've got to spy on everybody, we've got to let the bankers pass all these new taxes, we've got to pass the carbon taxes or the ice caps will melt, and we'll all drown, and you know, we've got to give up our rights or the terrorists will attack us. I mean, it's as obvious as the nose on your face. And then we have all the documents that they are premeditatedly terrorizing us. We have a terrorist government. We have an illegitimate criminal global corporate state. And now Obama is running around saying the number one threat is nukes going off in the U.S. But when we get the internal Homeland Security documents from Bush and Obama during their administrations, the real threat, what they're as busy as beavers or as busy as bees in the springtime, running around like they're building the Death Star or something, spending all their time and energy massing for war against the American people if you try to say no to having your pension funds taken. But they tell you, oh, look at the outside threat. Look at the outside threat. Homeland Security's here. Homeland Security's here to keep you safe. Oh, the environmental movement's here to keep you safe from the melting glaciers. You go to Al Gore and say the glaciers are getting bigger, and he goes, I won't respond to that. Absolute fact they're getting bigger. Absolute fact all this is going on. They don't care. This article by Kurt Nimmo is key. Unthinkable. Propaganda for false flag nuclear terrorism and torture. Let's go ahead and play that clip.
I've placed 3 bombs in 3 American cities. And all 3 are nuclear bombs.
Until the FBI.
The only miscalculation in your plan was me.
He's the good guy.
What is this place? Nowhere. Doesn't exist. Neither do we. He has to believe I have no limits.
The suspect is being tortured. This is unconstitutional.
If those bombs go off, there will be no Constitution.
I don't need your help. I can take it. I deserve it.
I back that up a few seconds to where she's sitting there talking about the Constitution. See, she's the bad guy. And the hero, Samuel L. Jackson, is torturing this evil, horrible-looking guy who's sitting around laughing, and then he says he wants to be tortured. See, all these are psychological pieces. The person being tortured wants to be tortured. He's going to nuke kids. He's bad. I remember Law Enforcement magazines 15 years ago I was reading, and every issue was anthrax is going to be released and kill 1 million people. Do you torture the person, or do you torture his children? As a former Black Ops commander, I tell you the answer is yes, just bathing the cops in evil. And then the cops torture you for no reason. This is the warping of minds. This is the twisting of minds that is going on. And notice this is all coming out. There's a whole bunch of TV shows and movies about torture and about nukes in the U.S. and how we've got to have a police state and the CIA on the streets of America. This is all behavior placement, brainwashing. You are being brainwashed. Remember how they had a whole bunch of movies in the 3 months before 9/11, like Pearl Harbor and others, about sneak attacks and about America standing up and about everybody joining the military when it happens? I mean, they had it so pre-programmed that they went and told Hollywood to produce all those films to create this fake patriotic fervor ahead of the staged attacks of 9/11. That's how scripted all this is. And I'm telling you, they're going to stage terror attacks and blame it on the American people. They're going to stage nuke attacks and blame it on foreign shadowy governments. Then they'll stage more attacks a few years later and always claim Al-Qaeda moved to some new country. It's the empire's pretext to invade and take over. Let's finish the clip.
Suspect is being tortured. This is unconstitutional.
If those bombs go off, there will be no Constitution.
I don't need your help. I can take it. I deserve it.
I'm here because I want to be here.
I will find your lie, and I will break you.
I will not allow this to happen.
It's not about you. This is war. This is sacrifice. This operation is terminated.
How far would you go to protect your country? Unthinkable. How many movies have you seen where the good guys torture? And then the cops come up in this latest video I've seen. Not only is the guy paralyzed, he has no legs. Doesn't have legs from the upper hip down. And they say, get out of your chair. And he says, I can't. And they said, that is a police order. You know, they love this mental illness of the threat continuum of if you don't do what they say, then that's pain compliance. You are tortured in America. Torture. We're a nation that tortures people openly everywhere and then says we don't torture.
You prey on us when we sleep. Oppression. You chase after the tired or the weak.
Okay. Let me try to calmly and systematically go over the news right now. Since the 40s and 50s, the U.S. government, in a staged event, now has been declassified. You heard Jesse Ventura talking about it when he was on with us last week. We had a deal with the Russians after World War II with Joe Stalin that he would attack a bunch of third world countries. We would claim we were opposing him. And then we would attack and invade countries. And then he would claim he was opposing us. Remember what Adolf Alois Hitler did with the Russian Nazi pact that was signed, in 1939? They divided Poland, a sneak attack. From the east, the Russians. From the west, the Germans. Well, the CIA and others at the end of World War II, the OSS, and Fletcher Prouty, who was the head of Black Ops, wrote about this, but now large portions have been declassified. They put Mao Zedong in. That's now even on History Channel. Kick Chiang Kai-shek out. But the genius of this was the U.S. just can't go invade countries because the people wouldn't put up with that. We were Christian, educated, informed patriots who knew what George Washington said. See, here's the problem. I'm trying to get into fake nuclear false flag, and then I start going through my mental process of how I understand all this. It's just impossible. It's just, there's just so much information. So what would happen is they'd pick Korea, or they'd pick Vietnam, or they'd pick another country, and they'd say, we're going to invade here, you're going to invade there. That'll allow us to make a lot of money and get control of society through weapons sales. It will allow us to create a paramilitary force that we can then use domestically. It'll give us battle-hardened troops in these wartime laboratories, as they're called. And so you take half of Germany, we take the other half after World War II. You take half of Korea, we take the other half. We take part of Vietnam, you take the other half, and then we kill each other. But we use that as a political diversion because if the Russians are at war against the Americans, the Russians can oppress their people because they're in a war. And the people go, we've got to do what the commissars say, we're in a war. Same thing in America. And it was when, and again, this has even been in the New York Times, the headline, McCarthy was right. Well, that was about 4 years ago. The Russians declassified that it was all true. McCarthy was completely right. The U.S. Army was basically funding the communists in Russia, ran the whole thing, gave them nukes, gave them everything. McCarthy